Hey guys, this one is for the wonderful Sammy Newman and his mates in the mainstream media, and that wonderful guest who this will be in the comments of, who used to work for G4S Port Phillip Prison, I believe. And there was a remark somewhere along the lines about, it can't be right, can it? Let me tell you about it and the creation of it, Sammy. I was in a toxic relationship with a girl, a generational drug addicted sex worker. When I was down and out, veered left and ended up homeless and granted, I did not know how to deal with that because I'd never had to experience it in my life. So my ego handled it poorly, no question. I was an angry mofo made angrier by a damaged, corrupted system who, when you're just a middle-aged white man, God help you. Anyhow, so what's happened? I stumbled into a toxic relationship with a girl who turned out to be a generational drug-addicted, street, sex-working, poly drug user, addicted to 4 drugs, if not 5. She was a very toxic case. And in that period, she was also a registered, paid informant. I never knew any of this at the time. So what my point is that I learnt her story. And when I was locked up one time, she got pregnant and had a baby, and that went to carnage. So there was no love, but there was a baby in this story. Now, the great minds, after I was asked to be a witness and interviewed by the most corrupted police force in Australia, Victoria Police, with well-documented corruption and manipulative, like, scumbagness to it, evident in things like the Lawyer X, or worse, the wonderful Constable Simon Illingworth story, Sammy. So anyway, what happens is we're plodding along. I'm struggling with homelessness. I make the mistake. Sorry, one step before that. Leading up to this, Corrections Victoria, when with the murder, horrible murder and rape of Jill Maher, seeing the entire law and order system in Victoria embarrassed to within an inch of its life, it turned it into the most bitter, petty-minded, ridiculous system in the history of ever. What it ended up doing, Sammy, was if you were one of the 50-odd% that tick the homeless box, the only housing the Victorian law and order system could provide you for those few nights of getting released, the most important step of any prison system, if we're talking about, reintegration and trying to reduce the chances of a bloke getting locked up again, the Victorian system could not provide housing suitable. So what that ended up seeing, Sammy, is this moronic situation. It ended up seeing a situation where inmates who had just turned left in the fork of the road, possibly like me, worked my butt off since I was 14, had a car accident, blang, 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 little addiction, and that was enough to just spiral out of control. Anyway, these peanuts, because they got embarrassed, because remember, Jill Maher was murdered and horribly raped, tragically, by a person who was on both parole and bail at the same time. So we won't drift into the Lawyer X and the 2007 and not just the myriad, of just epic fails from this same law and order system. But wait, let me carry on. Let me get to the point about it. So then what happened with it was we locked in this moronic system, right, where if you tick the homeless box and you happen to have a parole sentence, you're getting denied parole because the system's response to their mucking up, their incompetence, their mismanagement, often corruption, was to basically take it out on the inmates. Now that created a situation, aside the fact, the do-gooder fact, aside the fact that now you are punishing a person on their financial lot in life, aside that, it saw high-scale gangsters, organised criminals, drug dealers and bikies with way worse jail behaviour getting released at their earliest eligible, in effect rewarded by this moronic system, while those with the lesser charges, Sammy, were set there just festering away, getting angrier and angrier, getting made to serve their entire sentence. But wait, guess what happens now? They were getting released to what? The exact same rooming houses and motels, but now they've just got no support networks in place. Hello, Femi. It's bad. Anyway, so we're dealing with that. Then what they did was they sent me to Ravenhall. So I've got all this knowledge in my head. They sent me to Ravenhall and I'm looking around, are you kidding? They have spent bazillions on programs, on paths that don't even, they don't do circles, they spent money on outdoor ping pong tables. Come on, mate. Have you ever tried playing ping pong outside? Just lunacy made by left-wing morons, right? It was carnage. The internet was on, just carnage. It was just the most ridiculous thing I've experienced in my life. You had drug clinicians, you have more drug clinicians than you do inmates, who are all just walking around flirting with the boys. I'd look over, I kid you not, I'd look over from the basketball court trying my level best to pretend I'm still in a prison, and there's a 23-year-old clinician literally waddling like Kim Kardashian, like a duck, with a gaggle of probably 27, 19 to 28-year-old first-timers who all think that they're going to handbrake some moves on this clinician, and it was nonsense. So here they are spending all this money on this, and then what are they going to do? They're going to release, but they're spending all this money on courses, Sammy, where then what do? In those courses, they teach you a thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It costs a lot of money for these courses. They teach a thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs will teach you that before any human being, any human, can even contemplate positive behaviour change, that is, put a ciggy down, go to the gym, before they can even contemplate it, they have to have certain things in place. One, food. The other, shelter. So food, air, shelter, you've got to have this basic rung of human criteria met before you can even contemplate. So here they are teaching you, costing bucket loads of your money to teach an inmate. Basically, in effect, he's fucked when he gets out. He can't even contemplate behaviour change. He's got to sit through this moronic class watching 7 out of the 8 people flirting with the clinician, and he's sitting through that just thinking, well, I've got to get out to homelessness. Yeah. So, okay, yeah, great. Anyway, so you lose faith is my point. You lose faith in a bunch of left-wing peanuts. You can see, plus you've heard the rorts, you've heard the lower-ranked prison officers complaining about the higher-ranked officers rorting and plundering the $40 million, the exaggerated $40 million used for things like the repair bill of the completely avoidable metropolitan prison riots. So anyway, let's get back to it. So it's got this type of thing in his head. What else are they doing at GEO Ravenhall? Is they are using, I kid you not, they're using the stenophone, the intercom system, for shits and giggles. It's meant to be for the safety of prisoners and officers. Now, here you have 23-year-old, some 70 staff at GEO Ravenhall left in the first 3 months. So I was watching them get thrown under the bus, hand over fist. They just throw a 21, 22-year-old young lady to go and have a listen in on a bunch of boys talking in a cell. Oh, here, a better idea. Why don't you get a lesbian girl, young one, and get her to break a law and just have a listen in and listen to four seasoned men trying to outdo themselves, trying to one-up themselves in the bullshit stories in a prison cell. And then wonder why you got 70 odd, mostly women, walking out the door in a heartbeat. That's the type of moron we were dealing with. Aside the law breaking, granted, I started messing with them a bit, Sammy. I started taunting them down the line. Oh, yeah, you're a dickhead. You shouldn't be doing that. You're criminal. You know, things like that. Hey, dickhead, stop listening in. You're not meant to. Things like that. Maybe a bit worse. Anyhow, what ended up happening, there was a prison officer there by the name of Devon Woodbourne. Now, Devon, get ready for this. He was a commercial chef, Sammy. A commercial chef. That's it. Not you know, ex-Pentridge or, you know, being a prison officer at MRC. He was an ex-commercial chef. And because these morons can build a prison, but they don't do things like foresee how they're going to staff it, they're just grasping where we're going to get staff from. So they end up putting a commercial chef, not as a first-rung prison officer, as a unit supervisor, Sammy. Well, this unit supervisor by the name of Devon Woodbourne has gone and got himself in a bit of strife, hasn't he? He went toe-to-toe. Trust me, the kitchen hands are a little bit easier to manage than a bunch of houso kids locked up in a prison cell. You get me? Well, this houso kid run him in circles. And this Devon Woodbourne, allegedly, I didn't know any of this, allegedly made the mistake of taking this kid off camera, leading to an IBAC investigation and leading to two detectives with their lanyards and that, I reckon knowing full well what they're doing, marching straight into Port Phillip Prison and interviewing me in relation to this trouble that this geezer got into. I won't go into the full story of what he ended up doing, but the power went to his head, let's put it that way. Anyhow, from the moment I walked out of that interview, where I didn't know anything to tell, so there was no being a dog at this stage. But I was called a dog. You're a dog. It started, not from the inmates, from the prison officers. Sadly, from that, your mate's prison, G4S, Barwon Security, employed by corrections, Kath and all that, you're a dog. They'd hide behind the fence. This is the caliber of person we're dealing with. They would hide behind the fence and pretend they were inmates. Like it was like, dog. This is what we're dealing with. Are you kidding? Anyhow, so we got all this going on, but we've also got a friendship relationship, a drug using person that I would use drugs with, who happened to be a generational drug addicted sex worker now with a baby and a mess of a life, who in a past life, Sammy, when I was a bit more stable and working, I could have possibly at least got her, helped get to her appointments, and which was the intent. Anyhow, our finest, knowing that I'm a dog, saw an opening, didn't they? And they grabbed that poor girl and they coerced her. Through the Melbourne Drug Court, they coerced her. You help us get at him, right? You help us ruin the reputation of this dog, Michael Califf, and we'll give you the custody of your child back. I could name the names right now, but they all went to IBAC. IBAC didn't even investigate it, Sammy. They ended up coercing her, this girl, with the returned custody of the toddler. In all that, what else they did was weaponize. They had drug dealers. They had what I call approved drug dealers. So these are the approved drug dealers. the ones that work for the system, they had themselves drug court, miking it up, and because I knew how illegal it was, or how illegal, you can't be breaking in breach of all manner of surveillance laws to share my conversation. I told them to go and fornicate themselves in no uncertain terms, in a sense to bait them. Now, you got to remember in that, how they created it was it needed to apologise, allegedly, to a girl whose role was A, to drive hidden cameras on me, B, to install spyware on my phone, and C, just generally cause me trouble by airing private conversations and doing drugs with me and then just like making it all go public. That is what we're dealing with. Now that, Sammy, is how right it really is. And who was front and centre in all that? Your mates in the mainstream media. They were front and centre, the first to get manipulated and used. The first. They loved it. And the worst part of it is, when the one thing I discounted in all that, Sammy, was people, I thought people would be, hang on, that's wrong. No, half these left-wing morons, they'll hear you say a bad word like, you blah, 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 even if they heard it through Epstein nefarious manners. Even if they, how did you hear that? Oh, well, it was through an Epstein camera I heard that. What, and that doesn't bother you one bit? Oh, no. They were more locked on the fact that I didn't adhere to those left-wing ideologies. And that's what it turned into. It turned into the biggest left-wing lunatic, anti-white man snake whacking day you could ever lay your hands on. All in the name of protecting corrupt left-wing government departments. Sadly, that included police, and all driven through the Melbourne Drug Court, and all excused as, oh, look, it's behaviour change. We need to do this so, like, da-da-da, and nonsense. Just tell her to stop ringing me and telling me that her baby's going to die and her ex-scumbag junkie bloke has spent all their money and she needs a lift. Hello, that was, anyhow, that's the story. That's a quick story of it. I can assure you, it is right.